Last week we talked about a road, some call it Britain's worst, the A15 between Scunthorpe and Lincoln. Too narrow, too busy, and it's been labelled a graveyard for lorries after repeated incidents of overturned vehicles. This is what people told us.
You're talking inches between wing mirrors as they pass, and that's if they're both in the centre of their lanes. But obviously if you get a very narrow road, it tends to squeeze us. There's no room for errors.
Last year in June, a vehicle which was trying to join was hit by another vehicle which was coming north. A week before, a lorry had overturned.
Well, in a moment I'll be speaking to the man responsible for Lincolnshire's roads, but there were strong opinions on this. Just a reminder of some of them. John Paul says there have been hundreds of crashes on that horrendous stretch of road for decades now. What does it take for the council to take action? Maria says there were fewer accidents when lorries were restricted to 40 miles an hour. If the road can't be widened, it needs to have a speed restriction with cameras. Sylvia said it was a good road when laid out for Roman soldiers. About 1700 years later, it is ridiculous that the council thinks it's acceptable for modern heavy traffic. It should be called the B15. Well, Cllr Richard Davies looks after Lincolnshire's roads for the County Council, is with us now. Mr Davies, good evening to you.
Good evening.
What about Sylvia's comment there? The road was good for the Romans, but 1700 years later, it should be a B15 rather than A15. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's certainly, like a lot of roads in Lincolnshire, very old, and we have the Romans to thank for them, but it's not the worst road in Lincolnshire, and the evidence is pretty clear on that. As you'd expect, we have to spend our money, taxpayers' money, where it's most appropriate, and that has to be done on hard figures and not so much on anecdote. That said, we completely recognise the A15. It's particularly bad for HGVs, I recognise that.
Yeah, but it's not anecdotes, is it? We see it every day. We see pictures of it. See, cars in ditches and things. If you can't afford to widen the road, we just let accidents happen. And this is what's winding people up in the emails, because they don't understand how much more evidence is needed.
We have to prioritise roads, and we spend the money on the most dangerous roads first. And the A15 north of Lincoln isn't one of those. It's about 20th on the list. We're dealing with, for example, the A46 up towards Market Raisins, one of our most dangerous roads. The A631, not a million miles away from the top end of the A15, is very dangerous as well. And actually further south down towards Bourne, the A15 there is particularly dangerous. There are three top roads at the moment that we are focusing on.
Is the problem then the drivers on the A15 or the road? It's got to be one or the other.
Well, there's no such thing as black and white answer to a question like that. It very much depends on the accident, the time of day, and the kind of vehicles that are involved. I think it's clear that the A15 is very narrow. I think at times speed plays a part. Driver behaviour, of course, is key. I mean, one of the things we have looked at is the runoff on the side of the road. In some instances, it's been very sharp, and what we're trying to do is, where we can, put reinforcement in the side. But we do ask people to drive to the conditions.
You're doing a new assessment of the road this year. If that shows that it's not fit for purpose and needs major work, will the money then be found, and will the situation change?
I need to correct you. No, we're not doing a particular assessment of that road. Every few years, we assess all of Lincolnshire's roads for safety to make sure the statistics we're working from are accurate, and that will take into account the most recent accidents. Because as you'd expect, we have to spend limited taxpayers' funds, and I would remind you, we've just had our budget cut by the government by 25%. That's £12 million less to spend on the roads. So the little money we do get, it's really important we spend it on the highest priority roads.
I've got a list of comments here from people. Will you lower or consider lowering the speed limit?
We have where it's appropriate, we have reduced speeds on roads, and the A15 is no exception to that. But speed alone isn't going to stop accidents.
What about banning HGVs?
I don't think a discussion about rerouting HGVs is particularly healthy. I don't think me as a local councillor should be telling people, lorry drivers, where they should be driving. The reality is Lincolnshire needs the investment that other parts of the country get, and it's important that we as a public, you as the media and our MPs get together and say, why can't Lincolnshire have the same money spent on its roads as places like Hampshire?
Very interesting one. Cllr Davies, thank you very much indeed for coming on tonight. Most grateful.
Thank you for your time.
And a lot of response on that story, a lot of strong views.